Now let's go through the same process for the boots. I'll select one and let's zoom into it. And once again, we don't need the other side right now, so let's go ahead and delete the mirror modifier. Now, if you recall, when we did these boots, I created seams down the back here and along this edge. Oops, let's switch to edge mode, and along this edge here. And I think these would make good places to hide seams, since they are the seam of the boot anyway. So let's work on that. Let's alt-click this edge and let's deselect. I'll hit the C key and scroll the mouse wheel a bit. And with the circle select tool here, I'm going to press the middle mouse button and scroll along and remove the edge in front and on the bottom here. I'll go to wireframe and let's middle mouse button and drag there and all the way up here as well. So we just have that edge on the back of the boot selected. So I'll press Control E and select Mark Seam. Let's also create a seam right down in here. Alt click here. So right along the top of the sole of the shoe. I'll press Control E and mark a seam there. We don't really need the sole of the shoe to be connected. We can alt click this edge and go ahead and add a seam here. Probably we're going to need to, now that I think about it, I think we are going to need to mark a seam along here. Let's go ahead and extend that seam on down the back of the heel. Mark seam. And then let's go ahead and use that seam that we created in the high poly to hide this seam here in the UV map. I'll press Control E and mark seam. Okay, let's see how this works. I'll select everything with the A key and press U and unwrap. I feel like these may be a little bit squashed. You can see the sole of the shoe here isn't the proper proportion. I think we need to apply our scale here. So let me go back to object mode and open up the panel with the N key, and let's scroll up, and sure enough, scale isn't applied. So let's press Control A out here and choose scale. Now that we've got that all ones, let's try this again. Tab back into edit mode and press U and unwrap. Yeah, now that looks better. All right, so let's apply that material. I'll pull this down and choose our test pattern material. I'll also choose texture viewport shading, and here we go. Now we're doing pretty well back here. This all looks pretty good. But then when we get up to the toe of the shoe, that's not looking too good. Look how much bigger this is than this. And that's not what we're looking for. So, how are we going to fix this? Well, Blender has another tool that we can use, the Pen tool. Let me deselect these. I'm going to hover over this one piece because this is the toe right here. And I'm going to hit the G key and pull it out here so we can kind of work on it on its own. I'll hit the period key to zoom in. I'll rotate it a bit like this just so we can work with it like this a little easier. And so let's take a look at this. If I move it so that C8 is right on the toe, you can see how big it gets. And you can kind of see that here in that the polygons here are very small. So the smaller the polygons are, the bigger the squares and the letters become on the object. So how can we fix this? What we need to be able to do is stretch these out while keeping the others relatively the same. To do that, what I'm going to do is select these points, say, around the sides, like maybe here, and once again out here like this. And then I'm going to pin these points. So under UVs, you can see this menu item, Pen, and P is the shortcut for it. I'll go ahead and click this, and now you can see if I deselect these points, each of these points has turned red. Now, how we can use this is if we come over here to UVs again and we choose Live Unwrap. So what that'll do now, if we choose one of these points and we move it around, Blender will automatically in real time try and re-unwrap this island again and again as we're moving the point around. So here, let me show you. I'll hit G. You can see it's trying to unwrap this as we move it around. So what we can do is we can maybe take these 2 points, and I'll hit S and X and maybe scale these out, and let's see what happens. So now look at what's happening. That C8 there is about the size of the E8 now. And if I select them all, I'll hit the A key to select all those points, and I hit G and move them around. You can see that even when the C8 gets down to the very toe, it's still pretty much the same size as that E8. And that's what we want. All right, so let me zoom out here. I'm going to hit the B key to border select just these points here. And I'll take G and I'll move these back into here. Now, I don't need to move them all within that 0 to 1 space quite yet, this gray square, but ultimately we're going to have all of our UV islands in a single 0 to 1 space. And I say 0 to 1 because the coordinates of this square, 0, 0 is down here, and 1, 1 is up here. So 0 to 1 are the coordinates, and that's why I call this the 0 to 1 square. So that's how we can UV map our boots. Let's go ahead and go into object mode and just check them out one more time before we move on. And yeah, I think that's going to work out pretty well. So let me hit Shift C, and so we can see the rest of the model. And we've gone ahead and just done one side of each of these pieces, and that's what we're going to do for everything. Since this is a symmetrical model, we're going to just UV map one side of it and have the textures for that one side apply to the other as well. And the way that's going to happen is we're going to have UV islands on top of each other. So real quickly, let me just show you what I mean by that. We can look at this fairly easily with the boots. So if I tab into edit mode and select these polygons, you can see here are our UV islands for the boots. Now if I tab back into object mode, and I'm going to go ahead and mirror this over to here, and for the time being I'm going to go ahead and apply this. I'm going to hit apply, and so now this is all one object. If I hit G, I can move it around like this. This is all one object. So if I tab into edit mode, you can see that the UV islands are still the same. Since there are two boots here, you'd think you'd see the UV islands doubled up. Maybe over here we do have twice as many polygons. But the thing is, the new polygons are actually underneath the old ones. So if I select this UV and move it, you can see that there's the other one right in here. So that's how we can create textures for only one side of the model, because when we put the textures over the UV islands here for our boots, say the leather of the boots here and the soles here, those textures will go through and be for both of the islands, one on top of the other. So let me go ahead and just select one side of these. I'll just go to wireframe and hit B and border select this boot here, and we don't need this quite yet, so I'll hit X and delete faces. All right, so that's how we're going to double up our textures, is because when we mirror them over, they're going to appear exactly beneath the existing polygons. All right, so in the next video, let's start working on the UV maps of the body.